Shalom, my name is Yair Davidiy. I'm speaking to you from the land of Israel. Today we are going to briefly discuss British Zionism, or the British assistance to the foundation of the State of Israel and building up the infrastructure that the state needed in order to survive, and which did indeed enable it to survive and to prosper, to become what it now has, and God willing will continue to develop and grow and become a mighty nation as it deserves to do so. And all of it's part of the credit for this, at least for the beginning, the first steps, goes to the British. The British, in a sense, were the first Zionists. They were the early ones. They were the foundational elements. Now, we know that the British, they issued the Balfour Declaration towards the end of the First World War in 1917, in which they declared their intention to assist in the foundation of a Jewish home in the land which was then called Palestine. That is what they did, and that is what they proceeded to do. Now, there were periods when they tried to backtrack to some degree, when they were reserved about it, when they limited immigration, when they didn't go as fast as they should have done, as the Jews wanted them to do, as historical circumstances and the moral imperative perhaps would have required of them to have done. But nevertheless they went. They went ahead and they developed it, and they were positive overall throughout the entire period, apart from one or two incidents of suspect morality. Nevertheless, this is what we have. We have to look at the overall view. We're historians, and we have to take the general picture, the determinative criteria by which we judge what went on and what happened. We have an Israeli historian, Tom Seger, in One Palestine Complete, the recent book published in the USA in 2001. He tells us the British kept their promises to the Zionists. They opened up the country to mass Jewish immigration. By 1948, the Jewish population had increased by more than tenfold. The Jews were permitted to purchase land, develop agriculture, and establish industries and banks. The British allowed them to set up hundreds of new settlements, including several towns. They created a school system and an army. They had a political leadership and elected institutions. And with the help of all these, they in the end defeated the Arabs, all under British sponsorship, all in the wake of that promise in 1917. Contrary to the widely held belief of Britain's pro-Arabism, British actions actually considerably favoured the Zionist enterprise. That is what an Israeli historian tells us, and this is correct. It goes even more so, if anything, than what he has said. And why did the British do this? So we believe that the British did that because they were of Israelite descent. But they are not generally aware of it, and if they are aware of it, they put different interpretations on it. They do not appreciate it in the correct way. But nevertheless, they are who they are, and this is the foundation, this is the deeper instinctive reason for them having acted as they did. But it was translated into rationales that look for secondary reasons, for which we must look for secondary reasons that point in this direction, that gave the push, one could say, to bring things to fruition at the time that they did. Now, first of all, why do we say the British are Israelites? And when we say the British are Israelites, we also say that related nations, that is the USA, Canadians, Australians, New Zealanders, South Africans, also peoples in Western Europe and Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Netherlands, parts of France, so on, all that area also have Israelites in them, and we have talked about this and we discussed this. We have proofs concerning it. Now we are concentrating on the British as Israelites. We believe the British are descended from Israelites, from the 10 tribes of Israel, originally the 12 tribes of Israel, 12 tribes divided into two different sections. The northern section was conquered by the Assyrians, taken away, and they lost consciousness of their ancestry, but they remained together and they came to converge in the same regions and gave expression to the Israelite destiny. And somehow other peoples from these specific tribes coalesced in the same regions. And in the region of Britain, there came people from all of the tribes, especially from the tribes of Joseph, Ephraim, and Manasseh. And after the great migrations to North America, especially to the USA, the element of Ephraim remained more predominant than it previously had been in the British Isles. At all events, the British are identified as Israelites because they were located at the ends of the earth, which is one of the identifying signs. We're located at the ends of the earth, geographical extremities, as measured from the land of Israel. See Isaiah 24:16, 26:15, 41:8-9, 43:6, 49:6. They dwelt in islands. These 10 tribes will dwell in islands. Isaiah 24:15, 49:6, 69, Jeremiah 31:9-10. The British were associated with Tarshish, that is the Atlantic Ocean area, which is connected to the lost 10 tribes, and their return. See Isaiah 69. They were to the west of the land of Israel on the whole. See Isaiah 24:14, Hosea 1:10. They were located to the northwest of the land of Israel. See Isaiah 49:12, and numerous other proofs. The national coat of the British included a lion and a unicorn, and this was a symbol, or destined to be symbol, of the Israelites when they, in their mode of power and of civilizing influence on the world, on the other peoples. This was a symbol of the lost in tribes and the end times, a lion and a unicorn. See Numbers 24:7-9. It was also said the lost 10 tribes would rule over other peoples. See Genesis 27:29, 49:19, especially in the Hebrew origin, and our explanations of that would be recognizable as a Brit-Am in Hebrew. That is a covenant of the people, or commonwealth. Brit-Am is similar to Brit-Am, and that is how Britain was pronounced at one stage. Isaiah 42:6, 49:8. The 10 tribes would be seafarers. Isaiah 42:10, that would be the dominant world power. Numbers 24:7-9. Micah 5:7-9, that would be the battle axe of the Almighty, the policeman of the globe. See Jeremiah 5:1-20, Zechariah 10:7, that also possess the gates of their enemies, that is international strategic thoroughfares and pathways, as the British and after them the Americans do and still do. See Genesis 22:17, 24:60, and numerous other proofs, all pointing in this general direction. And all of these proofs have to be taken together as parts of a gigantic jigsaw puzzle, with each and every part fitting in, converging, supplementing or complementing the other parts, and creating an entire picture, which is what the Bible wants us to do and wants us to understand. We also believe that the lost 10 tribes converged in the British Isles and also in Western Europe, and that through Joseph was concentrated in the British Isles, especially Ephraim, and that they were destined to help Judah because this was part of their task. This was part of their task, their destiny as Joseph. This is what they were supposed to do, and this is what they did, and they were only aware of this at a subconscious level. We have a general rule that when something is moved, when the prime mover, one could say, is in the spiritual realm, in the deep subconscious of the psyche, of the soul of a nation, that other factors, other causes, other subsidiary urges and pushes also point in the same direction. So we will look at these in order to explain, even on the prosaic, non-scriptural level, why the British helped the Jews at that specific time. Now we have several reasons. One of them is the Restoration movement from the 1600s and earlier, and we're going on right up until the present day. Even the present-day evangelical movement in the USA is an outcome, it's a development of the Restoration movement. The Restoration movement was a movement amongst Christians throughout Western Christendom, throughout Christianity. There were peoples, individuals that, despite the special doctrine of their churches and so on, the official theology, they thought it would be a good thing if the Jews should return to the land and establish their own independent kingdom. There were individuals in Spain, there were people there was at least one person in Germany, there were a few people in France, people in America, including an ancestor of President Bush, And there were numerous people, a whole movement of people in the British Isles. Have it? So this is an important fact, and this movement spread. And the motivations of the people who held these ideas, some of them thought it was necessary to get the Jews into the land of Israel in order to convert them to Christianity, or as a prerequisite towards converting them to Christianity, and they had their own reasons for saying this. But there were others who even said, in effect, they didn't care. The Jews converted to Christianity did not. That was all in the hands of heaven. The main thing was to enable the Jews to return to the land of Israel. And this is known as the Restoration Movement, and it was an important movement. It was not a mass movement, but there were a lot of people involved with it. There were people who were important in a quality sense: aristocrats, writers, thinkers, politicians, great people, soldiers. It involved a lot. Quite a few people. Books were written about it, and the references were made to it. And agitation in its course was an ongoing and accumulative effect, one could say. A very good book about it was Franz Kobler, The Vision Was There, in the UK 1956. His book is available for free. It's a PDF download on the Brit-Am org, Brit-Am, Britam.org, Brit-Am.org website. The book may be downloaded for free from our website. And Franz Kobler tells us nowhere more in Britain has the idea of the restoration of the Jews, that is, return the Jews to their former state in the land of Israel, been developed into a doctrine, become the object of a movement extending over more than 3 centuries. Only in Britain, the leading spokesmen of many generations have been inspired the vision of a revived Israel. Only there. The creation of a Jewish national home has been a serious and almost continuous political issue, which was finally translated into reality. The movement is an integral part of British religious, social and political history, forming a parallel, not an annex, of the histories of Jewish Messianism and Zionism. That is, you had ideas amongst the Jews themselves. The Jews also were not quiet. They also always wanted their land back, and there were movements within Judaism to return to the land, and finally there was also Zionism in its religious sense, a religious movement, and in its modern secular form after Theodor Herzl came on the scene and so on. But they were not those who gave influence to the British movement. The British movement was independent of them and parallel to them, and just as effective as they were, if anything. So that is an important point. So we have it. So we have to find the moral, parallel, prosaic reasons that gave an impetus, that gave a motivation, one could say, to the British to create the land of Israel when they did. So one of the reasons is literal biblical heritage. The British became the people of the Bible. They began to learn the book. They took it to heart. There were many people who knew the Bible by heart. Some of them, that was only a book they ever read. They read it a lot, especially the King James Version. And there's an instinct amongst them to want to apply it in this literal sense, and to see what was described in the Bible fulfilled, and to do something in order to fulfill it. This is known as the literal Bible heritage that existed, which was also a factor, was have the moral imperative. The British were not entirely selfish. They developed the empire. They conquered people. They robbed people. They did things in China. They did things here and there, which are very questionable probity. But nevertheless, on the whole, in most places, they were reformers. They were a corrective element. They abolished slavery. After at first encouraging and developing it, eventually they abolished it. They did things for the good. They had a need, as if to say, to do things which were correct, to do right. And so they did. And in this case, they saw the doing of right was to help the Jews return to their land. They also saw the Jews were suffering. In Russia. There were pogroms, so the Jews were being persecuted. The children were being kidnapped by the Russian army and taken away and forced to become Christians, and all kinds of things were going on. And they had sympathy for the Jewish people, wanted to help them. So this is also another factor, the movement to find something to help the Jews in some way or other. This also was a contributory factor. The British wanted to leave a mark on the world, one could say. They knew the world was changing. Independence movements were rising in the colonies. The Indians were becoming more independent and becoming more educated, more assertive. The world was changing. Things could change. They didn't know what would happen in the future, what the future would hold, but they would like to have left some type of legacy behind them, which was positive. Part of this legacy was the idea of establishing or having laid the foundations for the Jewish national home in what was then called Palestine. They also wanted to remain involved. As we said, the world was changing, differences were coming up. Britain would not be able, many foresaw this, to always remain at the top of the herd, to be the top man on the block, as if to say, but nevertheless Britain would always want to remain involved, to always be a player. So maybe one other card in the deck might be to their advantage. It was to make things more interesting. To verify the probabilities, one could say. This is also an instinct found amongst the British and amongst others. And we also have the idea that the British were had a sense of being different, defying the world, of helping the Jews, whilst the rest of the world was oppressing them, of going in the opposite direction to the herd. So paradoxically, this is exemplified to some degree in the life of Henry-viii. Henry-viii executed 2 of his wives. He had 6 wives. He was, we would consider him a bad man in the light of our standards, which you have today, with questionable qualities in a moral sense. Nevertheless, he did things which left a positive effect on the British nation and also on the world in general. So we can see what he was, what he was not. Henry-viii was the son of Henry VII. As he was, when he was young, he had an elder brother called Arthur. Arthur was destined to be king, and Henry was destined to be some type of aristocrat, some type of official. He was not brought up to be king at first. Arthur was destined to be king, and Arthur was married off to the daughter of the King of Spain. Spain was then the most powerful nation in the world. After that came France, and then after that came the Holy Roman Empire, and perhaps Britain somewhere down below. And so Arthur was married off to the daughter of the King of Spain, and then Arthur died at a young age. So Henry became the heir apparent, the person who was going to become the king when his father would pass away. And so he was married off to Catherine of Aragon, who had been the wife, at least officially, of Arthur, of his brother. Then Henry became king. Henry at his court, he had a group of instrument players and musicians from Italy, all of whom were secretly Jews. They were, because Jews were being persecuted in Spain and Spanish possessions. Spain had possessions all over the world at that time, also in the Netherlands and Holland, and also in Italy. And there were people who were descended from Spanish Jews who had been forced to convert to Christianity, who remained Christians. And some of these people that became musicians, and they were working in the court of Henry, playing music. The papal legate became a legate, the representative of the Pope at the court. Each court at that time, each king had each royal court would have an ambassador from the Pope in his entourage. One could say this was accepted. The Pope was a very important person at that time when all the world was Catholic. And also the papal legate, the ambassador of the Pope was close to the King of Spain. and powerful person, he protested to Henry, and Henry having these Jews or quasi-Jews or secret Jews amongst his people, because the Jews had been expelled from England in 1290. That was about 300 centuries beforehand, and never been officially allowed into England ever since. And when, after the brother of Henry had married Catherine of Aragon, the daughter of the King of Spain, one of the conditions in the marriage agreement was that Henry the bridegroom would not abrogate, he would not nullify the decree of expulsion against the Jews. And Henry was breaking this, as if to say. So Henry sent all the musicians away, but then he brought them back one by one. Also at that time there was the Inquisition. The Spaniards were persecuting Jews, or descendants of Jews, more especially as descendants of Jews who had returned to Judaism or suspected of returning to Judaism. The Spaniards had their Inquisition in Spain and in the Spanish possessions throughout the world, and also in the Netherlands, in Spain itself, elsewhere. Henry couldn't do anything, but apparently Henry did have some influence. Some saying what went on in the Netherlands, because, I don't know, because of commercial connections, whatever. And he was able to bring about, in some cases, a lessening of the persecution of the Jews. And this was due to his intervention. Also, Henry decided he wanted to get divorced from Catherine. He decided, because of reasons of his own, Henry wanted to get divorced from Catherine. The Pope wouldn't let him get divorced because the Pope was afraid of the King of Spain, and Catherine was the daughter of the King of Spain, or now the sister of the King of Spain at that time. And so the Pope refused, but there was an argument between Henry and officials. He had theologians, he had priests, and he had clergymen working for him on his side, who were working at the books, working at the church laws, and trying to prove that Henry was justified in wanting to divorce Catherine. And some of his arguments, in order to back up his arguments, in order to bolster his case, emissaries from Henry went to Jewish rabbis and Jewish authorities in Italy and to get advice, to receive their opinions. And it's interesting that he used their opinions in his arguments on this Christian theological issue. So this shows something about the English character on the whole, to go outside the accepted parameters and to have a feeling towards the Jews that despite everything that they had heard about them, that they were supposed to believe about them, there was something good about the Jews, something valuable, and that the Jews deserved to be treated as fellow men, and they had something of value to impart to the rules we live by. And so these factors taken together were one could say influential causes that influenced the British in 1917 to issue the Balfour Declaration and to bring about the Balfour Declaration, which led to the establishment of the State of Israel. We should not also forget that together with this, there were Jews agitating, campaigning. There were also Jews in the land of Israel at that time, even under the Turks, the pioneers setting up kibbutzim, setting up settlements, and Jews all the time wandering around, talking to important Jews overseas, to important non-Jews, and trying to persuade whoever would listen that the Jews should be helped to set up the land of Israel. The British saw that they were influential and that they could help and that it could be positive, and also they sympathised with them, so this too, well, it was another reason why the British helped the British at that time. It may have been the main reason, but the other factors were also of importance. The Lord God of Israel bless you. Thank you.